Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Shia City podcast where we answer questions from you guys. As per usual, we're here with...
Sheikh Bilal?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have a bunch of questions that you guys asked over the past week, and inshallah, we will answer them all, or as many as we can.
Let's get to it.
All right. Starting with the most liked question. This question has been asked many times.
Okay.
Why did you go to iftar with Bruce Blakeman?
Okay, so that's a personal question that about my actions and what I chose to do. And if you have a question about that, come see me. This is a platform to talk about Islam, and I'm happy to talk about Islam. But using the anonymity of the internet to come after someone or to try and expose things and events like that is an un-Islamic behavior. And that's not what we established this platform for. This isn't about me. This is about facilitating knowledge of Islam.
Gotcha.
So I'm not going to answer personal questions. I don't think it's relevant to our platform. That's not what we're here to do.
All right, so let's move on to a more Islamic question.
Let's do it.
Salam. Is everything predestined, or can our du'as/prayers change our destiny?
100%. That you can change your destiny and you can change different events in your life. When someone asked our sixth Imam and our Imam answers and he explains, he says, it is not entirely predestined. It is not entirely free will. It's an affair between both of these points. So there are things that are in our discretion that can be changed. There are things that can happen if you pray for them and you ask for them. And it's our responsibility to ask for everything. And which is why there's a hadith from Imam Ali where it explains and he says that there are some things that Allah has insisted that they will definitely happen. Other things that Allah has insisted will never happen. And then there's this third category that Allah retains in His discretion. And had it not been for this discretion of Allah, I could have told you everything that was going to happen from now till the end of the earth. But the reality that Allah has left a series of affairs open to us and He hasn't told us which ones are mandated and which ones aren't is the reason why the Ahlul Bayt say ask for everything and always ask for everything. And whatever it comes is good for you. So for example, there's even a poet who explains and he says, I'm pleased when Allah gives me what I ask for. I am 10 times more pleased when Allah doesn't give me what I ask for. And he explains and he says that when He gives me what I want, it is my will that is the one that is being manifested. But when Allah doesn't give me what I want, it is Allah's will that is being manifested in my life. So the point of this conversation, the point of mentioning this is that asking is always important, but the context of understanding that if I don't get what I want is also important. That Allah is saying that I choose what's better for you rather than to give you what you think is better for you. So that's the only reason why that we would find ourselves in a situation that our will conflicts with Allah, because Allah has made a different decision for us. So
Gotcha.
It definitely does change. It's something that you should always pray for, and which is why we have books like Sahifa Sajadiyah teach us how to ask to make sure that our du'as and prayers are answered.
Gotcha. All right, on to the next question. Is there any specific verses in the Quran that mention the Ahlul Bayt?
So, okay, first off, one of the important things to know is that contemporaries of the Holy Prophet were not typically mentioned in the Quran, with one exception, which isn't relevant to our discussion. And the fact of that is with the interest of the fact that people of that time would not manipulate or try to modify the Quran. However, when we talk about the verses of Mubahila, which is in Surah Ali Imran, verse number 66, that talks about that who are the people that the Prophet are anfusana wa abna'ana wa nisa'ana, that who are ourselves, who are our children, who are our sons, who are our women, the only people who are relevant there is the Ahlul Bayt. So there's a discussion around Ahlul Bayt. When we talk about, for example, Ayat-e-Tathir in the Quran, it's relevant that it only talks about the Ahlul Bayt. When we talk about Surah Al-Dahr or Surah Al-Insan, where it talks about there are those people who feed the poor, the orphaned, and the freed slave for the sake of Allah, and they don't want anything else, this is the Ahlul Bayt. There's many references to the Ahlul Bayt, but to say that, oh, I want to see their names listed there, that's a shortcoming of the individual that says, I want Allah to do what I want. Rather than go and use the intellect that Allah gave you to see what He explained to us in the Quran, you're saying, no, I want it in the way I want it. And Allah talks about this in the Quran, that people of that time used to complain to and say that if this is really from Allah, why didn't an angel bring it? Why didn't something else bring it? Why did a human being bring it like this? And Allah answers. He said, had there been angels walking around on the earth, I would have sent it with an angel. But there are humans walking around, so I sent it from amongst them. The point is that it's not on us to say that, oh, give me what I want the way I want it. It's our responsibility to go look for it. And if you look at Mubahila, it can't be argued. If you look at Ayat al-Tathir, it can't be argued that this is anyone other than Ahlul Bayt. So there are these points, and they're there. But if you just literally say that no, until you show me the word, you know, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein all together in one sentence, I won't believe it. Then, Baba, then that's it. Allah didn't cater the religion to your intellect. He catered it to what is right for all people of all times.
Nice. Okay, so here's another question that I actually relate to. What is the ruling on men wearing bracelets and necklaces? Is it haram? So before we get into it, I have a quick story time.
Let's do it.
In January, I went for Umrah for the first time.
Nice.
I was in Medina, going to Masjid al-Nabawi.
Okay.
I was wearing my distasha.
I know where this is going.
Okay. Now, it was this necklace right here, actually. I got it in Iran. I wasn't wearing it out like this. It was tucked in. Probably like the tiniest little crevice was showing. And I went into Masjid al-Nabawi a bunch of times beforehand. So I go in. This guard comes up to me, starts yelling at me in Arabic. Unfortunately, my Arabic isn't the best. Sabakum Allah bil khair. But again, I didn't know what he was saying. So he kept yelling and yelling. I was like, I don't know what you're saying. Another guard comes up. He grabs my necklace and does this. He's like, Bidah, haram, haram. I was like, really? I didn't know. I never heard that before. So I took it off. I put it in my bag. And then they let me go through. But, yeah.
So is it haram?
I don't know.
All right. So let's explain this in context, right? One of the things that Islam is specific about is that men should dress like men and women should dress like women. And that it is a sin for a man to dress like a woman and for a woman to dress like a man. It's not allowed in Islam. But what defines the dress of a man and woman is subjective to what's called urf, or the culture of the time. So it can happen that things are inappropriate in a particular culture and are exclusively associated with women. And in that culture, that item would be inappropriate to wear. And it can be that they are not in another culture. So for example, and from their reaction, well, let's extrapolate, right? So from their reaction, let's extrapolate and say that for a man to wear a necklace in that culture is completely inappropriate because it is entirely viewed as a feminine dress item. In America, where it can be both used for men and women, there are certain styles that are designed for men to wear, and it's considered acceptable and appropriate for men to wear. So therefore, in this culture, it can be possible for it to be worn. The relevance is not to say that, oh, this is an absolute in all time, in all places. Rather, the relevance is to say, what's the appropriateness in the culture that we live in? I'll give you another example. In many Eastern cultures, in Middle Eastern cultures, to wear jeans are considered a masculine pair of pants. And that women wearing them would be considered inappropriate in some of these cultures because historically, now obviously as time has changed in globalization, jeans are kind of like unisex. They go for everybody. But up until maybe the 90s, jeans were a man's clothing in many Eastern countries and cultures. And if a woman was seen wearing these, it would be deemed inappropriate because that's men's clothing that a woman is wearing. So we would say that there was a time and a place where jeans were specifically for men and a woman wearing it was inappropriate. Does that mean that here that was the case? No, not necessarily. So each culture is going to have their different representation. So looking at the culture and the environment that we live in, it can be that if it conforms with a gender role that's appropriate, then it's acceptable. But if it questions that gender role boundary and becomes something that's ambiguous to say that it's not easily identifiable, that you are aligning with this gender or that gender, then it's inappropriate because gender roles do exist within Islam, and which is why even a dress code is important to say that men should not wear women's clothing and women should not wear men's clothing. So that being the boundary, that's where this answer exists, that if in the culture you live in, it's considered associated entirely with the opposite gender, you can't wear it.
Okay, so it depends on country.
Culture,
yeah. Okay, on to the next question. I lost track. As a Muslim, is it wrong to work for the NYPD or any police organization?
So generally you're allowed to work with many of these areas that are halal and permissible, but you can't use it as a process by which if you're abusing another Muslim or abusing even another person, that it's appropriate. So the question is kind of coming from the idea that right now we're seeing the NYPD, looking at current context of what's happening, The NYPD is seen as an abusive institution, and it's abusing and oppressing people. So remove the NYPD and say that, can I work with someone who's abusive and oppressive to people? No, I can't. That's not what I'm supposed to do. So that's it. That's kind of where it's coming from. Same way, when the NYPD is doing good things, when it's doing and helping people, when it's going out and supporting people in need and saving lives, then yeah, that's fine. Then it's great. But if they're doing something oppressive, then and that's it. I can extricate myself from that situation, that I'm not part of that process, that I work with them, but I work with them, for example, to help, stranded motorists. I work with them to patrol neighborhoods to make sure they're safe. Those are things that are jaiz, they're permissible. So the context is that we're seeing something that behaves inappropriately. That inappropriate action is what's forbidden, not everything. So what's the English statement? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So,
Huh?
you guys are too young to know this sort of stuff.
Don't throw a baby out with bathwater?
So, right, imagine that you have dirty bathwater that you want to throw out and there's a baby in there. You take out the good and you throw out the bad.
Okay.
Look it up sometime. Let Google be your teacher instead of me. There you go.
Why can someone who was born illegitimately not lead prayer? How can the sin of the parent dishonor and invalidate the child's ability to lead prayer?
Okay, so this question is pointing out certain restrictions. So, for example, when we look at who can be imam of jama'ah of prayers, there are certain characteristics that have to be present in the person that we pray behind them. So this is something different in madhab Ja'fari as compared to some other madhahib that exist within Islam that basically say anybody can lead prayer. In madhab Ja'fari, there are some restrictions that your qira'at has to be correct, you have to be a just individual, and you have to be of legitimate birth. These are 3 examples of those rules that exist. Now, when it comes to the idea of legitimacy of birth being a criteria to lead prayers, it's actually a criteria as well to be a marja' taqleed as well too. Why are these restrictions there? Now, first and foremost, you have to understand that certain rules and regulations within Islam are put there to create a positive effect in society. I'll give you an example. When we talk about, for example, as-sariqu was-sariqatu faqta'u aydiyahuma, when in the Quran it says that the male thief or the female thief cut off their yad, which refers to their fingers, by the way. That's another conversation. Some people come and look at it and say that, Islam is barbaric, that, it says cut off hands and cut off fingers and things when someone steals. Before we even get into how that law is applied and what is the situation when that law is applied, the purpose of that law or the spirit of that law is to prevent theft from people, that they look at it as such a bad thing. Nobody wants to be a thief. In the same concept, the utilization of saying that an illegitimately born child can't lead prayer is not the punishment of the child, but first thing it does is it corrects the society that nobody wants their child to be illegitimate. So it does a social correction. So many of these rules and laws are implemented to correct society and keep it from falling into sin, that there's a consequence to these actions. For example, in our current environment in America right now, people are questioning, why get married? You have a kid, whether you're married or not married, you still have a kid, you raise a kid, you do your thing, and you live your life. Who needs to be married? Islam came about and established and said that no, marriage is one of the fundamentals that creates a bond of responsibility and obligation to one another and creates good norms in society, and therefore Islam promotes it, which is why our Prophet would say, an-nikahu sunnati, that marriage is my tradition. وَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي لَيْسَ مِنِّي. One who stays away from my traditions, who doesn't follow my traditions, is not from me. That marriage is a good thing. So here, Islam showed a consequence of having children that when you're not married is a bad thing. So this is one. 2, the aspect of the fact that we are disadvantaged because of the decisions of our parents that they've made is not unusual in life. A child can be born with asthma and suffer from asthma because their parents were smokers. Why is that fair? It's not fair, but it's the reality that exists, that each of us as individuals, our decisions impact the next generation. So it can happen that I'm born with a negative consequence because of the decisions my parents made. It happens all the time. It's a part of reality. Does it mean that I am individually a bad person? No, but this is the life that I got because of the decisions that were made by my parents. Hence the responsibility to be good parents and to acknowledge the consequence of our decisions upon our child. A child can be restricted from being, for example, a runner because they have asthma. A child can be restricted from being, for example, an athlete because they have a disability. And it's a consequence of the decisions that the parents made. It's just the reality. So that's it. The child himself has a limitation to what he can do because of what his parents gave him. The same way we say some people benefit from being born a Muslim and some people don't, right? Does that mean that, oh, because my parents didn't make me a Muslim, it's not my job to be a Muslim? No, I still have to be a good person, do the best that I can. And the same concept, an illegitimate child has certain consequences because of the decisions that the parents made, and that's what they're dealt with, and that's the life that they have to lead. The same way that, God forbid, if they had a physical disability, a mental disability, a spiritual disability, all these different elements that can exist as a consequence. So our goal is not to go down that path so that our children and our family don't have to face these difficulties and problems.
Gotcha. On to the next question.
Let's do it.
This one also relates to me.
Oh boy.
I have 6 cats. Anyway, since cats are not considered najas.
6 cats.
Yeah.
How many children are you planning on having? Never mind. Don't answer that.
So since cats are not considered najas, then why can we not pray if we have their hair on us?
Okay. So first off, cats are not najas. Their saliva is not najas. Obviously, their pee and their poo is, which is impure from all of them.
Yep.
But the animal itself not being najis has less to do with libas al-musalli, the clothes that you pray in. When we go to pray, one of the things that we're not allowed to wear is what's called ma la ya'kulu lahma, is those things whose meat you can't eat, you can't wear in prayer.
Okay.
So that's one of the restrictions of libas al-musalli, that I can wear, for example, wool, I can wear cotton, but an animal who's not, that I can't consume, I can't wear that animal in prayer. And that's a restriction of salat. Now, a cat fits the criteria of an animal that I don't eat, whose meat is not edible, that even though it's tahir, it's something that doesn't fit the category of libas al-musalli. So the consequence of that is that many of the ulama came to the conclusion that even one hair on your clothing is something that is impermissible because I'm not supposed to be having that on me when I go to pray. Sayyid Sistani has the ruling that he says 1 or 2 hairs is okay. Meaning what I do is I make sure that I do the best to clean myself. And if something gets left, something minuscule, unknown, I'm not intending to wear it, it doesn't count that wear. It's okay that if it's on me. But otherwise, it's not specifically about cats. It's cats and all these other animals that fit into the category of meat that you can't eat. You don't wear their fur or their skin in the condition of prayer. So hence, this item gets tossed out in that sense, not specifically against a cat, but because a cat fits the criteria. So what do? You do one of a few things. Either one, you get yourself a really good lint roller and you keep it by your prayer mat, or 2, in which you should do anyways, keep your place of prayer separated from, keep it a room, keep it a place that's separated from the animals, from the cats, whatever else it is, so that they don't get into there and put hair into those locations. And if you can change your clothes, you change your clothes before you pray. And that's mustahab as well too, to put on clean, special clothes for prayer. Or 2, you have outside cats. But I think that's how you got 6 cats. So maybe that's not the right decision. So, but there's nothing against cats per se specifically. It's the condition of understanding that they fit into a category of what's not permissible to wear, not that there's something against them.
If a family member is homosexual, are we supposed to cut ties with them?
Okay. So the most important thing to remember is hate the sin, not the sinner. So meaning that just because someone commits a sin, we don't immediately throw anybody away. And if we go to the process of not having mercy that someone can find a way back from a mistake or a flaw, then you can't expect Allah to have that relationship with you. So within itself, a person commits a sin, as long as they're not adamant and blatant and open and exposing it in front of everybody, we don't punish them, we don't separate, we don't abuse. Now, if a person comes up and they, for example, commit a sin that they're not hiding, they don't hide, they do it publicly, they don't care who knows, then yeah, you have to separate yourself from that person because now they're doing something that's forbidden in Islam and they're opening and doing it publicly. But if, for example, someone comes and doesn't expose their sin, you come to know of it and you know about it, but they're not exposing it, they're not insisting that you accept it, they're not insisting that this is okay, then you should keep a relationship with them. And in keeping relationships in family is very important. Same thing, right? Let's rephrase the question that someone comes to the masjid who you know has this attribute. Do we throw them out immediately? No. But if they come into the masjid and they insist on it and they say that this is right and I'm right and this is okay, then yeah, we have to ask them to leave because it goes against the fundamentals of our faith, and Allah has told us that this thing is bad and brings about Allah's punishment. So as long as it's not a question of insistence, giving them and exposing them to people who are following Allah's religion, following Allah's halal and haram, is a good way to expose them to the idea that they can be someone who removes sin from their life and follows Allah's commands. So hence, the act within itself is impermissible. It's bad. But someone who's struggling with a sin, we don't just throw away. As long as they're not adamant, insisting that accept me and that this is okay, we're okay. We can let them and sit with them equally. And yeah, you can reduce the amount of time that if you feel that there's a negative influence, then reduce it. But don't cut relations entirely that there's no way back.
And then on to the next question about Zanjir matam. Do you think Zanjir matam should be allowed? And does Zanjir matam make a person najis?
Do I think if it's allowed is not a relevant question. Shar'an, it fits into the category of what is considered mubah. It can be permissible and it can be even something that is a reflection of somebody's love. When it comes to azadari, when it comes to, for example, mourning the cause of Imam Hussein, many of us mourn in different ways. Meaning that, and that doesn't mean that one way is necessarily better than another. Someone may sit on the street and just cry thinking of the cause of Imam Hussein. Someone may do zanjir, someone may do matam, someone may do a variety of different things that are a reflection of their love and the grief that they experience for the loss of Imam Hussein. Within itself, there's nothing wrong with it. That if I want to express my grief, because it doesn't in any way, for example, it's not considered casting myself into perdition, that I'm threatening my own life or endangering my own life. Now, does it make someone najis? Absolutely. If you have spilled blood, blood is najis. But does that mean that it's haram? No. It's not haram. Is it infamous? No. But where I have to be careful is by this action, if I put it in the wrong place, does it give a bad image to Islam? If in the case it gives a bad image to Islam, then hukm thanawi, that it may be permissible by itself, but because it's giving Islam a bad image, I have to either one, do it in a place where Islam's image is not impacted, or two, stop the action. So I can't say, oh, I'm going to do this and insist on doing it, and I know, and I know and I have yaqeen it's not good for the image of Islam, and then I do it, then it's bad. But you don't have to necessarily believe that it's bad for the image of Islam. Marhum Sayyid Sa'id al-Hakim, rahmatullah alayh, the marja, used to say, I wish everybody could see this. That they ask the question, who do these people love so much that they are willing to bloodlet for it? There's different perspectives. So within itself, is it haram? No. But is there a time and a place and an appropriateness for it? 100%. Does it make me najis? Yes, absolutely it does. It's blood. It's blood spilled. Blood is najis. You bring it out, it's najis. That I can't change that. No one can change that. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's true. On to another question. What can we do if our willpower is weak when trying to distance ourselves from a sin or habit, especially when we feel like our du'as aren't effective?
It's a great question. So, okay. Willpower is something that can be trained. There's elements of consciousness of knowing when and what is willpower. There's elements of knowing, what it is that I'm trying to achieve in visualization. It's the same way that anything that I'm trying to accomplish in life takes work. And if I'm struggling with it, there are ways that I can kind of improve that process. So for example, when it comes to willpower, sometimes what we do is we write down our goals and our processes, and writing it down holds us more accountable. Or talking to someone, building a support system and infrastructure that helps keep me accountable and helps keep me away from the sin, the action. Another thing that many times with many sins that we do, it's because we're alone and we have free time and no one is around us, is the time when most people sin. If there's an action or an attribute you want to change that you do when you're alone, don't be alone. Sit in the family room, don't go into your bedroom, don't close doors. Stay with family, stay with friends, keep people around yourself so that they keep you away from that idea of being alone where you have the temptation to commit a sin. There are books and ideas that are written about this, books and lectures that are given on this subject, and it's a good idea to research and study to learn what are the things that we can do differently to improve this attribute.
I feel like I do not obtain the full rewards of Salatul Layl if I perform it after Isha. What is your opinion?
Okay, so per the Maraja, per Khususan Sayyid Sistani, it's permissible to recite Salatul Layl after Salatul Isha, immediately after Salatul Isha. The best time to perform Salatul Layl is 40 minutes to an hour before Fajr Salat, or 30 minutes, however long it takes you, but right before Salatul Fajr. Now, here's the thing, right? This is our instant gratification speaking, where we do something and we want the result immediately. The truth is, being consistent with an effort is where we will eventually bring about a result. The change doesn't come in an instance, it takes time. So it may happen that I don't have time to recite it at exactly waqt fadilat, or the best time, which is right before Salat al-Fajr. But that doesn't mean I don't get a benefit. And the benefit is not something that I should be expecting instantaneously. Islam, spiritual growth does not work on instant gratification. It takes time. So that's it. Consistency of effort will bring about the result. Also, consciousness, looking for that, will also have a direct impact as well too. Sometimes what happens is we're looking for the impact of saying that, oh, all of a sudden I should kun fayakun, be, and it is. But the truth is, Allah brings about change very gradually. Maybe you find that there's more wisdom in your speech, and it's a slow change. Maybe you find you have more patience. Maybe you find that you're happier and have more positivity in your life. Those are impacts of Salatul Layl as well too, but they're gradual changes.
Gotcha.
So look for the gradual growth and consistency. Even if I don't see it the first day that I'm seeing the benefit, doesn't mean that there's no benefit. Change is gradual. We didn't get like this in a day. We're not going to get better in a day. Don't assume you recited Salatul Layl once and the world gets better. Give it the time that it takes.
So intention is what matters.
Give it time. Stay on it.
Gotcha. Regarding ayat tathir, were the Ahlul Bayt also purified from all types of najasat, such as physical types of impurities?
Okay. So when we talk about the concept of the thorough purification that Allah describes in the Quran and saying, وَطَهَّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا, and Allah purified you with thorough purification. What does this mean? There's a variety of different implications of what this could mean, but one of the places where we see this as a practical conversation is the hadith of closing the doors of the masjid, where our Prophet closed the doors to the masjid of all the companions' houses except for his door and the door of Imam Ali. One of the understandings was that these are two people that will never be in a state of impurity, which is why they can enter into the masjid in any condition that they're in. So there's some implication to say that there is no concept of physical impurity, that they are never in a state of impurity that is unique to the Ahlul Bayt, and that Allah is declaring that in Ayat Tathir. So it's possible. Can I say it definitively? Well, based upon the facts that are present, it implies that, which is why, for example, even the title of Bibi Fatima being Tahira, that she is Tahira, why? And the discussion becomes that she is someone who can pray her Salat immediately after the birth of her son. So she was always in a state of purity as well too. So it's likely. Does that mean that they didn't need wudu? That's not the case. Does that mean that they didn't go to the bathroom? No, that's not the case. But the fact that there are types of impurities that are not impactful to them is the consequence that we can draw from this.
And there's actually a second part to this question.
Let's see.
Are the infallibles physically incapable of committing sins, or was their taqwa so strong that they were able to abstain from that?
So this is a really interesting and very long and detailed question. Both of these questions that you're asking now, this is an introduction to the topic, not an exhaustive conversation around the topic, right? So what does it mean when a person is ma'soom? And ismat is of two types. There's ismat al-kubra and ismat al-sughra. Ismat al-kubra, or greater infallibility, refers to that infallibility which is necessary for the religion of Islam, and those are the imams and the anbiya. And then there's Ismat al-Sughra, which is minor infallibility, which is the infallibility that a common person can achieve. So you and I, today we decide not to sin. Today we're infallible. We keep going the days of our life where we don't sin. Every single day that we don't sin, we're infallible, and you can be sinless for the rest of your life if you choose to be. An imam is not like that. An imam is someone who is sinless by necessity. Now, when we say that they're sinless by necessity is where the question comes, oh, does that mean that, oh, for example, there's a shield around them that prevents them from doing those things? And some different schools of thought do believe that the Prophet, na'uzubillah, would want to sin, and Allah would stop him from it to protect him from these actions, because Allah knew he was going to make him into a prophet. We don't believe that. What we believe is that sinlessness is grounded in intelligence and intellect and knowledge. And the more knowledge you possess, the less likely you are to sin. To the extent where we have a hadith from our sixth Imam where he explains and he says, we look at sins with the reality that exists and the filth that's associated with them, and we don't want to do it because we know of the harms that are associated with it. So the Imam's sinlessness is grounded in knowledge. And the reason that that's important is, had it been simply miraculous, the Imam would no longer be an example that we can follow and try to be like, because we'd be like, oh, well, Allah protects the Imam, who's protecting me? But when the Imam's sinlessness is grounded in knowledge, that means that we can study and learn and improve ourselves. And as we educate ourselves, we can reduce our desire for sin, and we can see the evil associated with the sin. Now, there's a practical example that I give to explain this concept. Is think about 40 years ago. Were seatbelts common? No. Did people wear them? No. What happened? We went through a campaign of education of showing people the benefit of seatbelts, and it became something so common that now not wearing a seatbelt is qabih, is bad, and wearing a seatbelt is good and proper. So as we educated society, that bad action went away. It's the same concept. Today, you tell someone that I want you to drive a car and you're not allowed to wear a seatbelt, they'll say, Baba, I don't want to do that. That's not safe. So we educated and we remove that bad quality from ourselves. The same concept exists within the religion of Islam, that the Imam's knowledge of everything that exists shows him that these things are bad and that there's a harmful effect to them. So the Imam doesn't want to do it. So his sinlessness is not a force field, it's his knowledge. And that's important so that we can increase our knowledge and we can become sinless too. So study and do good.
Will do. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So
I agree.
So we did have a lot more questions that were asked, but unfortunately, due to our time, we couldn't answer all of them. Inshallah, in the next episode, we'll get to those questions as well.
Sounds like a plan.
If you want to watch our previous video on politics in Islam, please do so. Link in bio. Otherwise, that's all for today. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.